Oh, it's there. Cricket. How do you feel about that? I'm not judging. Keep that thought for a while. Food is probably the most intimate thing we have, right? We share food with the people we love. We eat when we're happy and we celebrate by eating. We also identify ourselves through food, both individually and culturally. And those are the reasons why it hurts quite bad when a guy comes here and tells you that that needs to change. But it will need to change because we're eating away the planet. And if we don't change the way we eat, there won't be food in the future. But we do have all the tools to change that. That's the good news. Another good news is that we have done that before. We have transformed the whole food system before. If you take a look far enough in time, you go like 250,000 years back, when the modern human being already existed, we were all hunter-gatherers. We're all hunting and gathering all our food. That's how we lived. We didn't have time to go to conferences like this. Now, that's how we lived for the most of our history, right? That's most of human history. The next big transition happened only roughly 10,000 years ago. That's when we invented agriculture. That's the agricultural revolution. We started to use animals and plants to produce our food. That enabled us to settle down and produce more food than we needed so that we could support some other people doing something else. And we started to build these societies, these communities, and bit by bit, science and technology, and that, well, got us here. So that was a big shift, not only in food system, but also in, well, humankind. The next big transition happened only roughly 100 years ago. That's when the Industrial Revolution happened, and the Green Revolution. We started to get all these machines on the fields, industrial production of fertilizers. We learned how to bind nitrogen from the air using a lot of fossil fuels and put those fertilizers on the fields. We got these completely new plant breeding technologies that enable us to create new species that we use now for our food production. And that enabled us to multiply the amount of food and the amount of people we can support in a very short time. But it also led into a lot of trouble, and we're painfully aware of this. These are the planetary boundaries. When we're on the green side, it's all good, it's all fine. When we cross the border, there's probably no going back for the planet anymore. And we've crossed already many. Nitrogen cycle, biodiversity, that's the 6th extinction wave, and climate change. There's probably no going back anymore. And these are all directly linked to our food production system. Nitrogen fertilizers, and we use 40% of the surface of this planet to produce our food. And that's the most fertile 40%. That's all away from the biodiversity. That is killing the life out there. And then there's the greenhouse emissions. Food production altogether produces roughly 26% of the greenhouse emissions. That's more than all traffic combined. Food production is consuming the planet. The bad news is that this goes both ways. These are pictures tweeted by a German astronaut that's just in August. He saw Europe first time in daylight and says that this is the most shocking view he's seen. Everything that used to be green is now brown. Climate change is making food production impossible in many of the areas where we produce our food now. And it's not getting any better. By 2050, we should produce 70% more food. And that's not because there's more people, but because we're eating more, and we're eating more animal products. Now, this means that within my working time, it's somewhere here. We need to produce more food than we have produced in all human history combined. That's a lot more. And we cannot increase the surface area of the planet at all. So, animals. We use 83% of the agricultural area to feed animals. And animals produce only 18% of the calories we consume. It's a massively inefficient way to produce food. If you take all the birds on the planet, every single bird on the planet, 70% of them are chicken. Think about that. It's a lot of chicken. Now, what I'm saying is that we need a big change, guys. There's a lot of things we can improve. We can improve the methods we use now to produce our food. We can improve the efficiency of agriculture. We definitely should bring up the developing countries to the standards we are now having in our food production systems. We should stop wasting 1/3 of our food. Yes, we should go towards more plant-based diets, but that's not enough. We need a radical transition, just like those we did before. And the most important thing there is that we need to decouple food from the environment, both for the sake of the food system, because that needs to be protected from the changing climate and environment, but also for the sake of the planet, because the planet cannot cope with the food system. Decoupling. It sounds weird, but it's actually pretty simple. If you think of it, greenhouses nowadays, they are decoupled systems. We can grow food in Finland and in Sweden in the middle of the winter, the most hostile environment you can imagine for food production, because the greenhouse protects the crops from the environment. Greenhouses used to look like this. Now they look like this. They don't have windows anymore. And that's because the LEDs are developing, guess what, exponentially. They have become much more efficient and much cheaper in a very short period of time. And that means that light, sunlight, has become an annoyance for greenhouses. Now you can produce light from electricity. And that enables us to do farming in a completely new way. We call it controlled environment agriculture. Some call it vertical farming, but it doesn't matter if you stack the plants or don't. The point is that it's a controlled environment. So you can use resources much more efficiently. It's a closed loop. You use sometimes less than 1% of the water you would use on fields. And you produce multiple times the crops, because now you can grow food every day of the year. And there's AI controlling all this. Now, of course, it's more efficient, but one interesting thing is that you can now take food, you can detach it from the location where you used to produce it. We can put greenhouses in weird places like Dubai airport. They're building one of the biggest vertical farms now on the airport, so that you can grow the lettuce and the veggies that you would eat on the plane at the airport. Previously, you had to pack them in a plane in Netherlands, fly it all the way to Dubai, put it on another plane so that you can eat it on the way to Singapore. Now they can produce it locally and fresh. That makes a big difference. I think what's even more important, that we can grow all completely new stuff. We can give a second life to plants like Arctic bramble. Some of you might have tasted it. It's a delicious berry. It grows some parts of Finland, some parts of Russia, and it's going extinct fast. It cannot be cultivated on fields or in any systems we have now, but now we can cultivate that in these controlled systems, because they can protect it also from diseases. We might be getting Arctic bramble back. That's a delicious future. Now, I think we can do much better. But first, this is the point where we go to my childhood trauma. This is me. I practically grew up in a greenhouse. It was fun. It was never raining in there. And also, we were growing all kinds of stuff for ourselves, for the sake of it. And I was fascinated by the flavors and the taste we had there. I mean, why does a mint taste different than a strawberry? Why? I was a curious kid. I was asking those questions for my mom. She's a chemist. And at some point, she just couldn't, handle it, give me all the answers. So I had to start reading books. The first book I ever read was The Medicinal Plants in Finland. The second was Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess. And then I went to school and I had to read all the boring stuff. I was a weird kid, yes. But then the books were not enough. I had to go to university to study and find out why things taste different. And then there was this revelation at some cellular biology lecture when it all kind of came to me. It's about cells. It's those smallest units of life, those biological factories that use DNA as their code, as Tiffany told you, and they produce all those molecules that we taste and we need for our diet. The small living factories. When I go to work for VTT and do my PhD there, I go to a lab like this. Cell cultures. I kind of feel like going back to that greenhouse where I just was eating everything. I mean, if you check the, oh shit, let's go back that way. If you check me there, you see that? Probably putting just something in my mouth, something I'm probably not supposed to put there. I go to this lab, get the same question. You know, these are cell cultures. They are Arctic berry plants. They are strawberries, lingonberries, Arctic brambles, stoneberries. And we grow them in the lab for the sake of the complex biomolecules that they produce that can be used for medicine and for cosmetics. I go there and I ask, how do these taste like? And the people who had been working on these for 20 years could not give me the answer. Because you do not eat your experiments. You don't eat the stuff in the lab. I do. My boss is there. I shouldn't tell this, but they left me alone there one evening. So, could you eat these cell cultures? Could we get the nutrients and the flavors from there? It turns out, yes, you can. They're actually pretty nutritious. We started actually doing some research on this stuff later on. They do contain high protein content. They do have an amazing ratio of these omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids, way better than the actual plants do. They do contain those interesting phenolic compounds that we sense as flavors. And this is actually lingonberry jam that we made without ever going to the forest to pick the berries. We just grew the cell culture in the lab. Beautiful. So this is how we grow them. We put them in a bioreactor, in these tanks, and we give them some minerals and sugars, and out comes these cells that you can eat. Now this is a bit complex. It's a bit expensive. It takes a bit of, expertise to do it. So we started to design this home bioreactor so that I could actually take the cell cultures and grow them at home. So we designed this thing that you can see there. It looks a bit like a lamp you can put on your kitchen counter and it grows food for you. You pop in a capsule, fill it with water, turn it on, wait for a week, and you get these Arctic bramble cell culture out of it. Now, that would allow you to decouple it from the environment and produce some food at home. I don't really believe many people are willing to do this. People are fundamentally lazy, and I think we're getting rid of kitchens anyway at homes. But I do believe that we get this access to these supernatural flavors. I'd like to see these cafes popping up where you have a bioreactor, kind of microbrewery, producing fresh and locally, or things that you couldn't reach otherwise, like Arctic bramble. And we might actually need to pretty soon, because if the climate change goes as it goes, we might be running out of things like chocolate. That worries me. These are our good colleagues in Switzerland. They took cocoa plant, they made a cell culture of it. You see the cells in that corner there? They grew it in these bag bioreactors, harvested the cells, and made chocolate out of it. Now, if everything goes to hell, climate change is totally, cocoa goes, the dodo way, we have a plan B. We can still make chocolate. And you can use exactly the same technology with animal cells, right? You've heard about this. Clean meat, cultured meat. Now they call it cell-based meat. And now there's a big debate whether you can call it meat at all. But you take the animal cells, you grow them outside of the animal body, and not only the muscle cells, but also the fat cells, because you need fat as well in your food. And then you can put it in a burger, right? You've all heard this story. And you've heard it because there's this massive amount of companies working on it. There's European Mosa Meat, run by actually one of the SU faculty. There is Memphis Meats, just making a chicken nugget. They're actually saying that they might bring it on market still this year. There is the Israeli Super Meat, also working with chicken. There is Finless Foods, working with fish cells, so sushi without fish. There is amazing amount of money going into this industry. And what's interesting to me is that the biggest meat producers, Tyson Foods of the world, are investing in these companies. I think this will not disrupt the food system. And I will tell you later why. But this will raise an interesting question. Do we need animals to produce the animal-based products? At all. For more than 20 years already, we made insulin, not extracting it from the pig pancreas like we used to, but we took the human gene and put it in a yeast and let the yeast produce the protein, just like Tiffany told you. We put in information, they can produce things. In the same way, we have been producing rennet, it's an enzyme, for cheese production. We used to extract the enzymes from stomachs of dead baby cows and put it in cheese. But now for a long time already, we took the genes and put it in microbes and let the microbes produce the proteins in bioreactors and then put it in cheese. As this technology develops, we can now take the milk proteins, have the yeast producing them, and put those in yeast, in cheese. So we can finally make cheese without any compromise. If you tried any vegan cheese, you know that we have a big problem there. I want to have that mozzarella, I want to have my parmesan, and they just don't work out yet until we get the proteins right in there. And we are on our way. Now, while we were at it, at VTT, we also made eggs. We actually solved one of the biggest problems of mankind. Chicken or the egg. Take out the chicken. Now, 70% of the birds, right? That's insane. And 1/3 of the eggs are actually used as powders, ingredients, albumin, that we use as an ingredient for food. That alone is a €5 billion business only in Europe. If we can change even a bit of that, that would make a big impact. So these are actually, one of these is egg, one of these is egg that we made in the lab. I don't remember which one is which because they are exactly the same. And we calculate the costs. And with the development of technology, we're now almost there. It's almost the same price as making it with chicken. Now that's the disruptive point right there, right? No salmonella, no question about, cage chicken or free-range chicken or organic chicken. You get away all these ethical concerns. This might be a big thing. And now you have to remember something. Biology has become technology. Biology is technology. And that means that it's also developing in the same way as technology does. Tiffany told you all about sequencing technologies and also creating new DNA. Here's a familiar curve. This is the amount of raw sequence data we have stored from 91 to 2014. We're somewhere at 3,000 terabases. The amount of biological information is exploding. The data is exploding. And at the same time, we have all these fascinating new tools to edit it. Now I stand away from my talk for a second, and I'm standing here with Tiffany as a European. The whole insane thing we have going on with this GMO thing in Europe is just absolutely nuts. Please stand up and ask your government to completely replace that old regulation, and let's just start regulating new crop varieties based on their qualities, not on the technology they were made with, because that could make a big deal. Interesting project that is going on, synthetic yeast 2.0. This has been going on a bit less than for a decade. It should actually finish still this year if it's on schedule. It's a living Tesla. So what these guys made, they not only read all the sequence, the DNA of a yeast, a baker's yeast, but they rewrote it. It's like taking a car apart and building a completely new chassis, just like they did with electric vehicles. And once you have that, can start redesigning life in a completely new way. It's a completely synthetic organism. This took a decade to get this done, but we effectively made an organism from scratch. We're getting back to this. Now, we can start redesigning that genome. And you heard Eric talk about generative design and Suzanne talking about generative design. When we start redesigning those organisms, we don't need to redesign those. We have machines that are way better at it. We don't necessarily even need to know how an organism works to have an AI designing a new one. We're coming to this time where we have life by design. It's actually quite exciting. We're going to have a man-made machine designing life. Think about it. Now, human genome is only 27 times larger than the genome of baker's yeast. It takes just a couple of doublings, and we can design a human genome from scratch. Not just tweaking, not just fixing a couple of things, but redesigning the whole genome. Having an AI redesigning the whole genome. That's pretty exciting. Now, what will we do about it? Well, let's get back to eggs. Now, the purpose of a chicken is not to make a perfect omelette. Chicken has a completely other purpose in evolution. The purpose of a chicken is not to make a perfect meringue. But now that we can redesign proteins and organisms, we can redesign the egg albumins to make a perfect meringue. Make egg proteins that are not allergenic. Make proteins that we feel full when we eat them, or we don't feel full when we eat. We can redesign that. We get this completely new freedom to do these things. And now you say, hold it, not my food. Is that natural? Sounds super weird, sounds dangerous. Is that ethical at all? I'm with you. I understand. That's okay. It feels a bit rush. But think of the most natural thing you can think of. Carrot. Long, orange, round carrot. Now, carrots are not like this in the nature. They have very tiny roots, and they are white or purple. The first report of an orange carrot is from 1721 from Netherlands. Anyone watches football? Orange carrot? Coincidence? I don't think so. They could have gone with the purple. They didn't. Now, carrot, if you would have shown the carrot from here to that hunter-gatherer over here, they would have thought of it as alien technology. They would have thought that's a freak of nature, it's unnatural, and cannot be healthy for you. The same goes with corn, wheat, rice, any cabbages you can find. Many of the plants we use now, they're completely man-made, and they live on man-made environment, fields. Have you ever seen fields in nature? No. They're man-made things, just like bioreactors. But I'm not saying that food needs to look weird in the future, actually quite in contrast. This is Pat Brown. Pat Brown used to be a biochemistry professor at Stanford University until 2009. Then he thought, he needs to do something more for the mankind. He took a sabbatical and decided to find the most impossible problem to solve. Well, meat. Americans eat on average 3 burgers a week. And it's impossible to take them away from them because it's such a cool part of their identity. So he decided to make something impossible, established a company called Impossible Foods. He decided to make a burger that is exactly like a meat burger, but it's not. It's vegan. He made that by taking a gene coding for hemoglobin protein, put it in a yeast and make synthetic blood, add that to a vegan burger, and it will taste exactly like meat. You can leave it medium in the middle. If you've tasted these, you know it. They got 400 million funding for this company. They are already selling in more than 3,000 restaurants in the US. It's incredible. So we're coming to this interesting point. Now we have the Turing test of food. You have food made of animals, food made of animal cells, food made of plants, and you have those 3 burgers, and the point when you cannot make the difference anymore, when you cannot subjectively tell which one is which, they pass the test. The experience of eating meat does not change. The experience of eating a plant-based burger just changed. They're already there. The experience of eating cultured meat or cell-based meat or whatever you call it now, we're not there yet. Plant-based just won. They are on the market already. This is Beyond Meat, another company. They're actually selling their product next to minced meat in the supermarkets. They're not selling it for vegetarians. They're selling it for meat eaters. Big change. This is what's happening in Finland. A mill, a baking company, took their ingredient, oats, and they made a yogurt. A dairy company, Valio, took their process and a new ingredient, oats, and they made an oat yogurt. Now, companies that never before were competing are now competing with exactly the same product. Does that sound like a Kodak to you? It should. Now, if all food passes this Turing test, it doesn't anymore matter how it's made. And then we go to the stuff that Anja was talking about. It's all made of atoms anyway. Food is atoms and energy. Oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, most of it. You can find all those in air. Now you take a suitable microbe that can eat those directly from the air and use electricity as a power source. And you effectively get food from air. It's that simple. And it's actually made. The stuff that comes out looks a bit like wheat flour, contains 50% nutritional protein. It uses 10 times less land than soy production, 250 times less water. And we're not comparing it to beef, but to soy. That's incredible, right? The biggest thing is that you can grow it in cargo containers like this in Finland in the middle of the winter. Gets the power from the solar panels in the background, completely decoupled from the environment. And when you can do it here, you can do it here too, in the places where food production just is getting impossible, and where solar energy is getting really cheap. Science fiction? Not so much. We just spun out a company from VTT, Solar Foods. They are planning to do this. They're actually doing it. They're planning to get the novel food approval from the European Union by end of next year, and by end of 2020, they should have a facility running that would produce 100 kilos of protein every single day, anywhere on the planet. What I'm saying is that Future Farm looks a lot like a brewery. It's not a lab, it's a brewery. We're doing this already. I mean, if you're eating corn, corn is a microbe that grows in bioreactors. If you eat yogurt, that comes out of bioreactors. Beer comes out of bioreactors. It's not that different. It's not that scary again. But it will raise these questions. What is real food anyway? Like Andrew said yesterday, I think it was, real will become the most relative word we know, right? Especially when it comes to food. What does it mean that food is real? What does it mean that something is meat? What does it mean that something is yogurt? What does it mean that something is milk? We don't know anymore. Impossible Foods just got their kosher certificate this summer. Now, for the first time, for any Jewish people, it's possible to eat a cheeseburger. Because it's not technically meat that you're eating, so you can put cheese on it. Disruptive technology, I'm telling you. But we will have to ask these questions, and they will become more and more important as technology changes. And the technology will have to change. I mean, it's inevitable. If the climate changes, if the environment changes enough, there is no other way to produce our food than producing it in completely contained environments. That's a matter of survival. But I would like to see it as a change that we make because we see it as a necessary thing. If we can take the food production away from the most fertile parts of the planet and move it to places where nothing grows and scale it vertically instead of horizontally, we can live on a green planet and feed 10 billion more people on the planet. That's important because the biodiversity is the only resource that we can find only on this planet. It's the only finite resource there is. That is the only thing that we really need to protect. And we need to protect it from our food production. Now, I think just like with every other transition in food production, there was some other effects to the mankind as well. Just like that, this transition will enable something bigger too. Because if we can decouple food from the environment, we don't need the earth anymore. We could get away from this planet. For the first time, we could produce our food without fields. That would enable us to become truly interplanetary species, space monkeys, if you will. Now, I think we should go to space. We should go to Moon, Mars, and beyond. And I think the most important reason to do that is that if we do that, we have to face the most difficult challenges in food production and in circular economy, in how we use resource efficiently. And if we tackle those for a spaceship, then we have tackled those same issues for this spaceship. Now, I could be standing here and telling you that, food is $12 trillion business by 2020. There's a big transition coming, big disruptions, good place to do good business, but I'm not. I'm here to tell you that next time you go out there and you have something to eat, take another look at what you eat and how you feel about that. And then allow yourself to take an exponential look at what you eat. Thank you.